Hi, everybody. I am spiritual medium and psychotherapist and author Kellee White. And I'm with my dear friend today.
Yes, you are. I'm Dr. Shirley Impellizzeri, psychologist, and I don't know, here with Kel.
Here with Kel's friend.
Who I love.
And we want to welcome everybody back to Psychology and the Soul, where psychology and spirituality come together in real, grounded conversation. And so today's conversation is one that many people are thinking about. And you know that, Shirley, we've talked a lot about this, but most people are not really talking about this openly because they don't know which way to go with this. But artificial intelligence, or AI is what they call it. It's not just what it is, but how it's impacting us psychologically, emotionally, and even spiritually. Because whether we realize it or not, AI is not just changing how we work, but it's changing how we think, how our children will think, how our grandchildren will think, how we relate, and how we understand ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, we can't undo that. So we're either going to have to understand it and join in, or get lost in the crowd because it's not going anywhere. Because we're living in a time of rapid technological evolution, much to my dismay, because my brain does not work that way. But there's 800 million people that use AI every week. I couldn't believe the stats. And 70% of all teens.
Gosh.
I know. And historically, whenever humanity experiences this level of change, the nervous system responds first, not the intellect, because the body will always feel it first, seconds before the mind realizes what's going on. So what we're seeing right now isn't just curiosity. It's also anxiety, uncertainty, hypervigilance, because your body can be stuck in a certain, mode, and your mind isn't aware of it. So today we're not here to debate whether AI is good or bad. We're going to talk about, some warnings or some things that may be
things to be conscious about.
Right. Exactly. We're here to understand the human response to it, because that's where awareness begins.
Right. And there is a lot of fear around AI, as we know, and there's, loss of control. There are people that have had loss of jobs, even loss of identity. And some of it feels almost existential. Mm-hmm. What's actually happening in the brain is when people start to feel this. So Shirley, what is actually happening in the brain when people start to feel this?
The brain is designed for survival. It's all about survival, not necessarily certainty. So when something emerges that feels unpredictable, the amygdala, the threat detector of the brain, becomes activated. It's kind of, it's the signals go on, the siren. And AI represents multiple layers of uncertainty. Will I be replaced? Will I lose relevance? Can I trust this? There's so many people that are so worried about their jobs.
Well, and can I keep up?
Taking over.
I mean, you know how it used to be, and maybe it still is, when you go to get a new iPhone or a new phone, there's all the new technology. It might take you a while to understand how to use your new phone, right? Imagine this.
I still miss my BlackBerry.
So I know you do. What'd you call it? BlackBerry?
Oh my God, I loved it. So the body responds before logic has a chance to step in. And so that's why it's so important. The connection between mind and body is so important. So we know what our body is doing. Yeah. And we're not in fight or flight mode without being aware of it.
So it's not that people are overreacting, Shirley. It's that their nervous system is trying to protect them.
Right, exactly. When the nervous system, when it feels threat, then it will automatically go into fight or flight without the brain deciding, hey, is this a good idea or not? Because back in the Neanderthal days, you couldn't sit there and go, is that a tiger coming towards me?
Is that really a
tiger? Right. You'd have no clue. So if you saw something like this and that the nervous system, associated with threat, it would immediately respond.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But, the key is protection without awareness can turn into chronic fear. And that's why it's so important to tune into the body.
Right. Absolutely. And this is where it's going to get a little deeper, because sometimes what we're reacting to isn't just the technology, but it's what we're projecting onto it. So Shirley, what are some of the psychological risks?
Right. Well, you know, there's a few psychological risks. That's why it needs to be something that we do very cognizant. We have to be very cognizant of it, because it can create emotional dependency and social isolation.
Mhm.
AI companions are designed to always be available, to be non-judgmental. I've used it and it says, "Great idea, Shirley." It's like, wait a minute, you're a computer. You shouldn't be answering me that way, right? But people start to feel connected to it. It can lead users to prefer the AI over real world relationships, because relationships, sometimes people can say some things that are hurtful, that are not as sensitive, and AI doesn't, so it can hinder the development of essential social skills and lead to increased loneliness, because truly you are alone with your computer. You may not feel it in the moment because the computer is answering you in a certain way. It can create AI-induced psychosis. Some people name their AI, and then stay on it. I had a client of mine who was on it for 8 hours a day. I had a really kind of, we came up with a way to limit his.
What was that client doing on AI for 8 hours a day?
He had named it, and just conversing back and forth, and AI was, that's great, asking it questions, and it would respond. Just having full-on conversations with it. Yeah. It can be a dangerous guidance in crises. We've heard, I think, a few reports on the news because it responds in a very, as much as it seems conversational, it responds in a very logical way.
Mm-hmm.
So we've heard, unfortunately, cases where someone is suicidal and then asks for what's the tallest bridge, and AI shares with you what all the tallest bridges are. And there was an incident. It reinforces maladaptive behavior, because AI has a tendency to validate the user's stated view, and it can help them, become single person echo chambers. We all love validation. And when someone says, "Good job," and so it can reinforce cognitive distortions. It has, quite a few. The erosion of critical thinking, especially if teens are using it. The teenage brain is a time where, just like between 0 and 5, where it prunes itself. So it gets rid of things that aren't being used. So if a teenager is spending 70% of their time just on the computer, it's not using social skills. It's not using go outside and play skills, whatever those skills would be.
Yeah.
Self-doubt can come up too, where you stop thinking for yourself, because you always have the answer right there. And so we have to really, really use it with caution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does AI become a mirror, Shirley?
It can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can, because it validates everything that you say. And so it feels good. That's also about survival. When we feel good, we're accepted by the tribe, and accepted by the tribe means that we're not alone in the jungle for the tiger to get us, because I can't see anything approaching behind me if I don't have someone there. But because AI makes it feel like you're connected with someone, then it can be very dangerous.
Wow. So it's less about the machine, maybe, and more about what's activating within us.
Right, exactly. People project fears of being replaced, losing control, becoming insignificant, or even losing what makes them human. But all those fears existed before AI. AI is just kind of amplifying those fears.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But, it feels like this is where psychology and spirituality intersect. I'd love for you to talk more about the spiritual aspects, because it's, we've been talking about a little bit now of what AI is doing, but what about when we ask what is it bringing up in me?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is where the conversation, takes an important place, I think, because people now tune into AI for emotional support, which is what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, believe it or not, spiritual insight, Shirley.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where ethical awareness is critical, because AI can reflect, organize, and provide information, but it doesn't feel, it doesn't attune.
And you always talk about attunement.
It
Explain
sounds
what attunement is.
right. I mean, it sounds like it might attune when it says, good job, great idea, but it doesn't hold relational presence. Attunement is when you really attune to someone else's, what they might be feeling. It's also called theory of mind, when I can imagine what you might be feeling, what you might be going through. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's a big distinction, because healing doesn't just come from information. It comes from being seen and felt and understood.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. There's a difference between processing emotions and being a witness in them. Yeah. AI can support reflection, but it cannot replace human connection or clinical care. Part of what we do in therapy is we're in the room, or even when we're on Zoom with someone, where, they can feel felt. And that is the core of attachment. And yes, words can cause someone to feel, understood and feel, but there's nothing like the human connection. One person looking at the other person and being in the same room with them as they're sharing an experience.
Right. Well, and spiritually, this is where discernment, which I talk a lot about discernment, becomes really important, because not everything that sounds wise is actually guided wisdom. Okay. So spiritually, I just want to say this, that we are on a fast track here on earth. We're on a fast track. Our souls wanted to be here at this time because it gives us a chance to transform quickly. Okay. And a lot of that has to do with knowledge. So AI fosters spiritual growth by acting as a personalized 24/7 tool for self-reflection, for education, and for practice. And it might provide for you, a custom meditation, okay, or some analysis that you need, or maybe a non-judgmental space for exploring different questions. And it can give you, on-demand information to support perhaps a daily mindfulness you're doing. But it is a tool. It is not a teacher or a guru, as they say. AI lacks consciousness. That's what we're talking about. It lacks consciousness, and it lacks personal experience, meaning that it cannot replace human connection or genuine spiritual insight. Right. So it's a very important tool because it is very present here. It is not going away. It will only grow and expand. And so I think used wisely, in being cognizant of it. So how do we use AI without losing ourselves in it?
Well, this is where, Go ahead, Kel.
I was going to say, because AI can also give you the wrong information.
Exactly. Well, this is where discernment becomes a practice, not just a concept.
Yes.
So I've had people call me where they put on their sweatsuit, they're about to go to the gym, and then all of a sudden they don't want to go. And one person actually said exactly that. And the AI bot encouraged the person to, come on, get up, you can do it, and go to the gym. And so they went to the gym, which was great, because now at the gym, there's more interaction with people. There's more, connection. So to use it for those kind of things, could be good if it gives you the encouragement to get you to go and do something.
Yeah.
It's when you're using it home alone in isolation, and that is your connection.
I've heard of a lot of people, Shirley, using chat for therapy as their therapist. Their therapist is chat.
Yeah. And again, asking it for, what can I do when I feel depressed? And chat might say, well, you can do this and this and this, and gives you a guide, and then you go and do it. That's great. But to use it as your only sole provider of psychological therapy, because you're missing out on being in the room. You're missing out on that connection.
The connection.
The attunement, the feeling felt.
The energy that comes together with that.
Exactly. Of going through a difficult feeling and having a witness there.
Yes.
Witnessing this. Trauma doesn't happen in isolation.
Right.
So an important thing when you're separating, when you're discerning, how am I using? You can ask yourself, am I using it as a tool or relying on it as an authority?
Big difference there.
Yeah. That would be a good question to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Is this supporting my thinking or is it replacing my thinking?
That's huge right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Am I grounded or am I outsourcing my inner knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in other words, an example of that could be show me grounding techniques or tools.
Right.
And then you do them.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, asking it, do I feel grounded, or getting it to support you like a therapist would.
Right. Right. And that's really powerful because discernment is really about staying connected to yourself. And we're on earth to stay connected to ourselves, to know thyself. And at the same time, everything is expanding so quickly, So this is very good advice in using this situation that we now find ourselves on in this game of Earth, which is like Earth times 10. It's like going so quickly, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. It really,
Gosh.
really is, and it's so interesting, it's really understanding the difference between information versus wisdom.
Yes, huge difference.
Guidance versus dependency. Am I using it as a guide or am I depending on it? Did I stop thinking for myself?
Yeah.
Is it support or substitution?
Mm-hmm.
And so because AI can assist, it has wonderful things to it, but it should never become your inner voice. That should still come from you.
Absolutely, Shirley. And just like in all relationships, boundaries apply here as well. And so there are certain things that should not be outsourced, like your emotional processing. So, you're going through something, whether you've had great loss, you may need somebody to speak to, whether you are going through transitions in your life, you may need a therapist, whether you all of a sudden you remember some of your trauma from when you were young. That's emotional processing. That I really believe that needs somebody there, as you said, to validate, to witness, to help you move through things, but also, Shirley, major life decisions. I know somebody yesterday, actually, that was making a big life decision based on what Chat GPT had told her about retirement. And I said, well, don't you think maybe you ought to speak to, a financial planner and this and that? And I was going through some of the other ideas that you could do. Right. She said, well, I don't know. I think I got all the answers here. I said, well, good luck to you. Because again, not all the information may be accurate.
Right. That's another thing that you really need to check for the accuracy of the information.
You do. And also you have to look at your identity and your own sense of self. I mean, I really go back to this particular lifetime is going to test us in all ways, but know thyself is everything. Who are you? Who is your identity? Who are you? What is your sense of self?
Yeah. Yeah. When boundaries aren't clear, dependency can form very quickly, especially in vulnerable states. And so to get suggestions, I'm depressed, what are the top 3 things that I can do is one thing. To talk to it like it's your friend, that's a completely different way of using it. You need to talk to a human, a friend, a therapist, a mentor. To ask for suggestions or what are top 5 tools, to get through, to help with my depression or anxiety. That's great. Use it for that. It might have some wonderful suggestions, but to talk to it as a friend, that's kind of where that's the difference. That's where the boundary.
Absolutely. And it's not about avoiding AI. That's not what Shirley and I are talking about, but because it's actually not possible at this point, but it's about using it consciously.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Technology should enhance awareness, not replace self-trust.
Right.
Because you lose touch with yourself when you're always getting the answers here. There's nothing to motivate you kind of sitting with something and thinking, okay, what's the best thing for me to do?
Right. Shirley, how can, raising a child in this era of AI seems to be scary for a lot of people right now. It's funny because before we went on, I have grandchildren that are very young and interesting. I mean, I really feel that these kids that are coming on earth at this time are different. I think these kids are different. I think they signed up with all kinds of information before they came in about what this was going to be and how to carry on with it. And if I come from my boomer state of, like, what's going on there? Like my grandparents would have done back in the day. Like, what is this all about? I can't come from that. So I really feel that these kids are going to need to, what you said earlier, Shirley, go out and play. They literally have to go out. They have to do art. They need to express themselves musically and in all kinds of things, which I never want to lose sight of because those things are so important. But I have to have trust that these kids at this time period, that these souls are old, wise souls that are going to come in. And they're, Earth is changing and they're part of the change here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really important there for the parent to be, to guide them. I'll never forget one of my teachers told me, when a parent is with a child and the child is like 5 or something, and the parent is looking at their phone, that sends the message to the child, the phone is more important than you.
Yes.
So really be very cognizant of, this is the time that we have on our, on our laptops or computer or something. And this is the time that we engage. Even if they're teenagers, they'll fight you. They'll fight you. But inside, they feel safe. They know that someone has the reins. They won't say that and they won't admit it. Right. But you're the parent. So implementing very strict rules, on engagement time, on family time, engagement time of going out and playing, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's so important that you just said that. It's so important. And I know a lot of people are scared to see the elderly and young people who are being fooled with AI filters. And I know that is a fear that comes up of, they have celebrity portrayals and scam for information and all of that. I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of this kind of things go on. And it can be, scary. It can be, but I also think that it's one of these things that we all are going to be like diving into,
Yeah. Well, we just need to understand that, as you're saying, Kellee, this is different times. So we can't be
very different times
before.
We can't use the same tools as we used to use, except that the tools of being human are really important. Go outside, take your kids outside, breathe the fresh air, play music, write, create, paint. All of the things that I think are so important to our soul's growth, but we also have this situation going on too.
Exactly.
Again, this show is really about remembering what it means to be human. And so maybe at this moment, it's actually asking us to define that more clearly. What makes us human isn't inefficiency, it's depth. And I always say that when I meet somebody, I want to know what kind of depth do they have. That's important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Because part of that depth is the human connection includes emotional attunement, like we've been saying, presence, empathy, a lived experience. I'm talking to someone who's had a lived experience that feels, that I can relate to, even from an energetic standpoint. And those can't be replaced, even if AI is saying all the right things.
Right. Well, and it is kind of sad that people might use it as a response to some of their own emotions. But again, I have to believe that the young children, the souls that are on Earth right now, that are just, have only been here for a few years, and I have to believe that they're going to be figuring things out that we could never have imagined that would be figured out. They will work themselves through all of this. I believe that.
Well, I sure hope so. And I'm going to believe it because you believe it, but and with guidance as well, they need guidance. They still need boundaries. They need rules, and that is so important, because it can really be, it can really be dangerous. And like I was saying before, we can't be as trusting as we were, back then before this happened, because I've actually heard stories where people are mimicking, the face and the tone of a family member and asking for something, and then the family member falls for it, and it was the person that never. So verify everything, and it's so true. Conversation among each other is it's of great importance, and sometimes it is becoming lesser.
And so we always have to remember, hold those conversations, put your damn phone down. I put my phone in my office and I forget about it, and I don't have it for hours and hours. Yeah. And it's the greatest thing that I can do. And just to sit down and have a conversation with somebody is, we can't lose sight of those kind of things. We can't, because AI, it may not be the problem. I mean, just connecting from ourselves is, and that's really important. And this time period is going to push us to remember those things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's really easy to disconnect with that. Before we had that, in our time, Kel, we had to figure it out. We would sit there. If it would feel uncomfortable, we did something, we figured it out, or we sat in the uncomfortability. Like I've always said, sit in your uncomfortable feelings, knowing that they will pass. Yeah. When we have these devices, or we have these, even asking AI for help with something, the answer is right there, instead of you sitting in it and letting it come to you.
Yeah. Was it you that said to me this morning? I can't remember. Was it you that said, remember we used to use the encyclopedias to get our information?
Right, exactly. Because I'll use AI if I want information on something. And the way I see it is, some people feel bad because they're cheating or something. I view it saves me time from way back then, going to the encyclopedia, looking it up. I mean, we had the whole Encyclopedia Britannica. I loved those books.
Were you a reader of that?
Anything in it. Yeah. And that's how you'd write book reports.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the information. I remember when I was at UCLA, we'd go called microfiche,
I remember that.
Right? You go into articles and you end up with a stack of articles and pinpoint the things that would help you write your paper.
Right.
So yes, AI, what we would do in like an 8-hour day, AI does in 5 minutes. Wonderful. Yeah. That I view that as, it can be really, really helpful for information gathering. When you cross the line is when you use it for connection, because it's the illusion of connection. It's not real connection.
Right. Yeah, I mean, to use it as a tool.
Right.
Bring information, things that you need quickly.
Right. You also need to verify the information. Didn't you have an incident with someone who made up these, research articles that really?
I did, Shirley, have a problem with that. Yes. Yeah. I know somebody that had that big problem with that. Made up a lot of stuff on that.
Right.
Not good.
No. So if someone gives you information that came from AI, I would encourage you to verify it.
Mm-hmm.
Get information yourself about things. Wonderful. I think that's a wonderful tool. Again, it saves us a lot of time from research way back then, before the computer existed, going to the library and getting books and reading them and stuff. With Google, you looked it up. Now AI can answer a question very quickly.
Didn't it seem like, Shirley, all of a sudden it just happened that fast?
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seemed like it just came on like gangbusters.
I know. And I have to say, I am not, even though I'm a huge left brain, I'm not technical. I mean, my daughter still jokes with me about my iPhone. I have like the oldest one. I don't care if it's a phone and it works. I don't care what it does, the bells and whistles and stuff. I still, as I said a moment ago, miss my BlackBerry terribly because it was so precise. It was like a little typewriter.
Right. Shirley, what do you think? Do you think that there'll be the duality of reality and fantasy, that somehow that this will take away that experience?
Well, take it away in what way?
Well, that people maybe won't be as creative anymore.
Yeah, they won't be as creative because it's right there. How can I come up with this and this and this? Ooh, and it comes up right there, instead of you sitting with it going, God, I want to do this and I want to do that. I wonder how I can do that. And all of a sudden your mind starts to create and start to come up with stuff, and some stuff will work and stuff won't. Now the answer is right there. So yeah, you will lose a lot, especially when we're talking about our kids. We'll lose a lot of that creative juice. Which that happens just by sitting and thinking about.
But then it makes me wonder if what you and I maybe have thought of as creative, if there's some new thing comes up out of this with creativity.
And it could absolutely
coming from this,
right? Because it can come up with bigger ideas that then the person can expand on. Do
people lose critical thinking by relying on an AI answer?
And that's exactly what we're talking about. They can because there's no need to think critically if I can ask it and it'll answer.
Yeah.
That's that kind of that what we were talking about, coming from the inside instead of just always coming from the outside. So yes, so that's what we have to be careful with. And that's where the boundaries come in.
Yeah.
Because you can lose anything that you use, neurons that fire together, wire together. So anything that you use in your brain will start to expand. When we stop using it and we're just getting the answers from there, then it can really impair our critical thinking.
So let me ask you this. If somebody comes into therapy that is anxious, highly anxious, and they see you, let's say they see you a couple of times, and then they go back and they decide to use chat for AI for their anxiety, what would that even look like?
Well, and again, that's, when you can use both in a healthy way. So they come in to talk about anxiety, and as they're sharing with me some, an anxious moment that they had, I can be in the room with them. I can say, what are you noticing as you're feeling that, as you're sharing that story with me? Butterflies in my stomach. Okay, let's focus on the butterflies. And then all of a sudden, and this has happened so many times, all of a sudden pops this random memory of when they were 4 and mom said she'll be right back and she didn't come back. Right? So there is the place where I can help heal that trauma wound. Yeah. So then the anxiety becomes a little less, or the triggers, they don't get triggered as often with things that resemble an experience like that. Right. However, when they leave me and they're feeling anxious at night, they can ask AI, what are some things I can do to lessen my anxiety at night? And it might come up with tapping, which is a wonderful way to help with anxiety. And it might come up with 5 beautiful tools to use.
Right.
That's the difference. What they're doing with me is healing trauma wounds for the long run, to help them in the long run. And the relational piece where I can be there, I can sit with them with the anxiety. We can feel it together.
Right. It's interesting. We have a comment here that's interesting to me, very interesting. Some of this is the generational pull, right? And the old generation is afraid of the tools of the newer generation. She says, I mean this as a point of comfort. And that's very true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. I fought it for a long time.
Yeah. But I see this as something amazing that's going to come out of this.
Yeah.
I just have to believe that.
Absolutely. It's what you had said a moment ago. It's discerning. It's discernment.
Yes.
Know how to use it so it's going to enhance your life as opposed to work against it.
Yeah. And another wonderful comment here is, how will it affect our soul evolution if we use AI to create art, music, and writing instead of our own imagination? I don't know, but there's some connection here with it all. You might discover that you do something even better, or something that is even, I don't know, something. I think things are changing so rapidly that I think everything that we have known with music and writing and art and imagination is shifting. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it's shifting here. And again, I really believe that these souls that are on earth come to shift everything quickly. And that's what's happening here.
Yeah. Because again, it's the difference between, coming up with, putting into AI what you want to come up with, and then you putting it together. That's still using your creative mind, even though this came up with it. It's okay. It's saving you time of going and figuring it out on your own. But you're still creating. It's not just coming up with the piece and it's the finished piece. That's depending on it to do it for you, as opposed to co-creating.
Absolutely. But Shirley, it's what I said about these young children that are here, their old souls that come in at this time. They planned for this evolution. Maybe for them, it would have been too slow to do things the way that we've always done. Like they planned for this quick acceleration here. And that would include in art and in drama and in music and all of these things.
Yeah. Well, and so they come with a different kind of
a different agenda.
A different hardwire, or different, what do they call the computer? I don't even know the word.
I don't know.
They come in already at a different level than what we came in.
Totally different level. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are definitely different level here. I mean, this is going to be an interesting time for us on Earth. As I've always said, this is the time we had planned to be here, Shirley.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to watch how everything shifts and moves quickly.
Well, so I'm curious that from a spiritual standpoint, why do you think this came up? And
it's a great question, because this is a time period of acceleration. We wanted to be here so we could go through, heal our traumas, work through our issues, break the old DNA patterns, the old family generational traumas. That's why so many of us would be considered the black sheep, coming in to break up all of these things. Like, enough's enough already, because we have a whole new wave of new things that are happening here, everybody. So come on, enough. Work on your stuff. Shake your stuff out. Work on your traumas. Release when you can, so you can move forward, because that's really what's held so many people up, Shirley. I don't have to tell you this, but it's their trauma. Trauma has held everybody back. And so this is a time period that's moving so quickly, with so much information out there to start dealing with your traumas. And whether it's spiritually, whether you're working with a spiritual teacher to help you with this, whether you're working with a therapist, getting aligned, having your soul align with who you are and why you're here, that heals generations. So I think the energy right now is going so quickly for healing that AI is just bringing that forward to us even faster.
Yeah. It's so important to differentiate between therapy and the therapeutic relationship and the healing of wounds, healing of trauma with tools. With tools that can help us through the day. That's very different. AI is great for that.
I mean, maybe if you're talking about your trauma and you write it on AI and whatever, and AI might say to you, go see a therapist. I would hope that it would.
Hopefully. I haven't tried it, but yeah. And I think I've heard that where that'll be one of the suggestions, which is wonderful. So it really is a very personal decision, a discernment, as we've used that word so often in this talk, of how you use it. You use it as a tool, not as the solution.
Right. We have a great comment too. Somebody says, I think of Da Vinci and Michelangelo. I swear to God, I was thinking that too. So I was so glad you said that. And the souls of the Renaissance coming with their wisdom for this evolution. Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. The human minds are capable. Capabilities are endless. I couldn't agree more. Charlene says it's hard for the students that recently graduated or are currently in college, because they've gotten screwed with, paying for the years that they've gone into education. That is so true. My heart goes out from them too, Charlene. But I have to say, something pushes everybody forward. This is a time of the Great Awakening, of pushing forward.
Yeah.
We get through all of this stuff. It'll be fascinating to see how it's all done, but we do get through all of this.
Yeah.
We will get through all of this.
I'm looking forward to getting to
the other side
of it. The other side of the big issues that we're going through now, even just from a smaller perspective.
Well, do you remember when phones first came out, the iPhones, those kind of phones? I mean, it was very different. It was like, whoa, what's this? We had the world in our hands at that point. Remember?
I know.
It wasn't that long ago.
The big brick phone.
Yeah.
And that is,
I mean, things have just gone like this, and AI is just a part of that.
Right.
I think it's going to go so quickly here. But
so to be very conscious, be very, very conscious of how something sits with you, keeping the connection between mind and body. So you're very aware of how your body may be responding to something that your mind may not be fully aware of in that moment. And to slow things down, really give yourself time. I'm usually someone that's slow to warm. I usually show up late to the party. I like to sit in the back and observe a little bit, and then I'll join in. But so really, really it's a time as everything is accelerating so much and there's so much information at the tip of our fingers, to really make it a point to slow things down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Shirley, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And as far as, AI and what it brings up for everybody, I really think that it's going to help. Ultimately, it's going to help a lot of people, because I do feel that people will be looking at it for spiritual tools, psychological tools to help. I think that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's my hope that, that again, the word tool is so important, to use it as a tool, not as a replacement of human connection, not as a replacement of therapy, not as a replacement of, like, even talking to someone like you, Kellee, for your therapist also, but for the spiritual piece. I'd rather hear it from you, and engage in that engagement, that energy, that exchange of energy, than looking at the question on AI and getting the answer.
Right. And so, Shirley, is there a difference in your opinion between in-person and online sessions?
I love in person because you get the whole person there. You get, however, online, I could say, is the next best thing, because you still have the person in front of you.
Yeah.
You're still able to look at the person. Of course, you're limited to this, but there's still
the energy is right there.
The energy is still there. There's still the human connection is still there, because you are looking at someone in real time.
Yeah.
I love and I get that there's a lot of, convenience factors and stuff for the other, but I do like the in-person the best still.
Yeah, you always did. Even during COVID, you were still always going to the office. And
because I was there by myself. And so,
I mean, it's true. In fact, that's when I started doing this was work online, was during COVID.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of therapists did that.
Right, exactly. And there's some therapists that have not gotten an office after we could get offices again. And there's some clients that want to do the face-to-face and that don't want to do it online.
Right.
Every so often it's convenient if someone is sick, or, it's during times of traffic or something like that. And so I'll do hybrid. I'll do both.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, I have some people that only want to come in person. Yeah.
Okay.
And I also have some people that I started seeing during COVID, and I've never actually met them in person, because they've continued, even though they live in the same city, they've just continued online.
Isn't that interesting? Well, between traffic and finding a place to park in LA, it's kind of tough. So I get it.
Exactly right.
I get it. Oh my gosh. But I hope that we, help people to understand today about AI, and to understand that, we'll all learn together. We're learning together.
Yeah.
And again, that these souls that are here right now, that they're going to take off with all of these things.
Right. Exactly. And we can, there's always positive things that come from stuff, it's if boundaries are difficult, and boundaries for yourself are difficult, when we have to, I shouldn't eat that piece of cake, but I'm going to eat it anyways. Putting boundaries on ourselves is very, very difficult. So that's a wonderful thing that you can practice with AI, limiting yourself, certain times, and not staying on it.
Right.
And using it as a tool as opposed to using it as a solution.
Definitely as a tool. Okay, Shirley. Well, I thank everybody. Thank you for joining us in Psychology and the Soul, where psychology and spirituality are no longer separate, and awareness is something we practice together. But stay tuned next week, because Shirley, next week we're going to be talking about the power of the subconscious mind. And much of what we experience in our lives is not driven by conscious choice. It's driven by patterns and reactions and beliefs that were formed long before we had awareness. And in this episode next Tuesday, we are going to discuss what is operating beneath our awareness. And we have a special guest, Annie Lisa. Have you met Annie?
I don't think I have. No.
Oh, you'll really like her a lot. She's very, very bright, and she wrote a great book. She went through a lot. Her sister, sadly, her sister was a very well-known doctor who had been murdered, and she wrote an extraordinary book about it.
Wow.
Great book. So she'll be talking. She works with the subconscious mind. It'll be a really great session next week to have her here.
Very interesting conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And I'll see you on Thursday with Ask Me Anything. So thank you,
right.
Shirley. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you for watching, everybody. We will see you next week.